The late summer air hung heavy with humidity. Cicadas chirped, a constant drone against the impending storm. Inside her small apartment, Elise Jackson hummed along to the radio, her fingers dancing over a half-finished quilt. A knock at the door stopped her short. Two officers stood on her porch, faces grim, holding a photograph. Elise's breath caught in her throat. It was her daughter, Kendra, gone. News of Kendra's disappearance spread like wildfire through their tight-knit community. Neighbors whispered prayers and shared worried glances. Kendra, a beloved teacher at the local elementary school, was a beacon of light, her absence keenly felt. The police started their investigation, but days bled into weeks, with no leads, no sign of struggle, no ransom demands. Where could Kendra be?
Kendra was such a kind soul. Everyone loved her. It's just hard to believe she's gone.
Detective Bennington, a seasoned officer with weary eyes, took over the case. He had seen many cases in his career, but something about this one felt different. The weight of the unknown pressed heavily on his shoulders as he walked into the dimly lit office, files scattered across his desk. He studied the meager clues: Kendra's last known whereabouts, a dropped grocery bag, and a few scattered receipts. Each item told a fragment of a story, but none of them fit together. The grocery bag, still half full, suggested she had been interrupted suddenly. The receipts were mundane, everyday items, nothing out of the ordinary. Then there was the cryptic note found in her apartment. It was a single piece of paper with a hastily scrawled message: "Meet me at the usual place." But what was the usual place? He interviewed friends, family, colleagues, anyone who might have a clue about Kendra's life and habits. He spent hours, days even, searching for any piece of information that might lead him to her. Each interview added a new layer to the mystery, but also more questions. Her friends described her as cautious, not the type to take risks. Her family was distraught, unable to comprehend her sudden disappearance. But Kendra seemed to have vanished into thin air. There were no signs of a struggle, no witnesses who saw anything unusual. It was as if she had simply walked out of her life and disappeared. The lack of evidence was both baffling and frustrating. The case grew colder with each passing day, the leads drying up one by one. Bennington found himself staring at the calendar, watching the days turn into weeks. The pressure to find answers was immense, but the trail was growing colder, the weight of it heavy on Bennington's mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something, some crucial piece of the puzzle that would make everything clear. The sleepless nights and endless days of searching were taking their toll.
I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. Every time I thought we were getting close, the trail would go cold again. It was like chasing shadows, always just out of reach. Every clue, every lead just seemed to slip through our fingers. The frustration was palpable, and the sense of urgency grew with each passing day. We were running out of time, and Kendra's fate remained a haunting mystery.
Weeks morphed into months. The days seemed to blur together as the investigation dragged on. Each passing moment felt like an eternity, yet the clock kept ticking, indifferent to the urgency of the situation. The initial flurry of activity died down. The once bustling police station, filled with the hum of conversations and the clatter of keyboards, now echoed with a haunting silence. Desks that were once piled high with files and evidence now sat empty, a stark reminder of the dead ends they had encountered. The media moved on to the next sensational story. Headlines that once screamed for justice for Kendra were replaced with the latest scandal or tragedy. The public's attention shifted, but for those who knew her, the pain remained ever present. But Detective Bennington refused to let go. Night after night, he sat in his dimly lit office, eyes fixed on the caseboard filled with photos, maps, and notes. Each piece of evidence was a puzzle piece, and he was determined to see the bigger picture. He tirelessly pursued every lead, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. He knocked on doors, interviewed witnesses, and followed up on every tip that came in. His dedication was unwavering, driven by a promise he had made to Kendra's family. Every whisper, every hunch was meticulously documented. He listened intently, hoping that one of these whispers would lead him to the truth. His notebook was filled with scribbles, each one a potential clue. He meticulously reviewed security footage from the night Kendra disappeared, spending countless hours in front of screens, eyes straining as he rewound and replayed the tapes. He was desperate for a breakthrough, a moment that would change everything. Desperate for a glimpse of her, a clue, anything that could point him in the right direction. The grainy footage was frustratingly unclear, but he refused to give up. Every frame was scrutinized, every shadow examined. A clue. Anything. He knew that somewhere in the sea of pixels, there had to be something that would lead him to Kendra. His determination was a beacon of hope in the darkness of the investigation.
And then, a breakthrough. It was a moment that made all the sleepless nights and endless days worth it. A piece of evidence that had been overlooked, a detail that had been missed, suddenly came into focus. A blurry figure caught on a gas station camera, miles from Kendra's last known location. The footage was grainy, but there was something about the way the figure moved that caught the detective's eye. Miles from Kendra's last known location, in a remote area that had initially seemed irrelevant. The highway stretched out into the distance, a potential escape route that had been overlooked. Matched the description of a man she had argued with weeks before. The composite sketch and the photo aligned perfectly, a chilling reminder of the confrontation that had taken place.
It was like finding a needle in a haystack. But there he was. The elusive figure that had haunted the investigation was finally within reach. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together. Maybe, just maybe, we were finally onto something. The hope that had been flickering like a candle in the wind now burned brighter. The end of the long, dark tunnel was in sight, and with it, the promise of justice for Kendra. The grainy image sparked a flicker of hope. Could this be the break we had been waiting for?
The man, identified as Michael Turner, had a history of violence against women. A warrant was issued for his arrest.
The community held its breath, praying for Kendra's safe return. The manhunt for Michael Turner intensified.
Every news channel broadcast his face. Every police officer was on high alert. The tension was palpable, a city holding its breath.
After days of relentless searching, police cornered Turner in a seedy motel on the outskirts of town. He was apprehended, but Kendra was not with him. Hope turned to dread.
Turner, a career criminal with a cold, calculating gaze, refused to cooperate. He maintained his innocence, denying any involvement in Kendra's disappearance. The community watched, heartbroken and enraged, as the legal battle began.
The trial was a media spectacle. Cameras flashed incessantly and reporters jostled for the best positions outside the courthouse. The public's interest was piqued, and every detail of the proceedings was scrutinized and broadcasted. The prosecution presented a compelling case, weaving together circumstantial evidence, witness testimonies, and expert analyses. They meticulously detailed the events leading up to the crime, leaving no stone unturned. Each piece of evidence was presented with precision, aiming to build an unassailable narrative. They painted a picture of a man driven by rage, a man whose temper had often gotten the better of him. The prosecution's portrayal was chilling, depicting a suspect who had a history of violent outbursts and a propensity for aggression, and a history of violence. They delved into his past, revealing a pattern of behavior that seemed to culminate in the crime he was now accused of. The courtroom was silent as the prosecution laid bare the suspect's dark history.
The defense, however, argued that the case was built on assumptions and lacked concrete proof. They contended that the prosecution's narrative was more fiction than fact, a story woven together with threads of speculation rather than solid evidence. They highlighted the absence of a crime scene, pointing out that without a definitive location, the entire case was on shaky ground. The defense questioned the reliability of the evidence presented, suggesting that it was circumstantial at best, a body or a confession. They emphasized that without these crucial elements, the prosecution's case was incomplete. The defense lawyers' arguments were persuasive, casting doubt on the certainty of the suspect's guilt. The jury deliberated for days. Each member weighed the evidence, the arguments, and the counter-arguments. The room was filled with intense discussions, as they tried to reach a unanimous decision. The gravity of their task was evident in their somber expressions. The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. Every eye was on the jury door, waiting for the moment they would re-enter and deliver their verdict. The air was thick with anticipation, and the silence was almost deafening.
Finally, the verdict guilty. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding thud, and the words echoed through the courtroom. The weight of the decision was palpable, and the room seemed to collectively hold its breath. A collective gasp swept through the room. Faces reflected a mix of relief, shock, and sorrow. The reality of the verdict began to sink in, and emotions ran high. Some wept openly, while others sat in stunned silence. Justice for Kendra, but at what cost? The verdict brought closure to some, but for others it opened new wounds. The journey to justice had been long and arduous, and the end, though just, was bittersweet.
Michael Turner was sentenced to life in prison, his crimes finally catching up to him. But the victory felt hollow. Kendra was still gone. The void she left in the hearts of those who loved her remained. Her disappearance exposed the cracks in the system, the ways in which marginalized communities are often overlooked and underserved. Kendra's story, though fictional, reflects a harsh reality. Black women in America go missing at alarming rates, their cases often ignored or mishandled. We must demand better protection, better investigation, better representation. We must amplify their voices, fight for their justice, and honor their memory. This isn't just about one case, one woman, one community. It's about a system that needs to change. Let Kendra's story be a catalyst. Let her memory fuel our fight for a world where every missing person is seen, heard, and valued.